let me give you real quick for the listeners. Sally Buzbee did write an explanation or justification for publishing this. And I think, honestly, a lot of people should read that whole thing for themselves, of course, to try and get some, I would like to have a discussion with her about it. I think that would be more illuminating than just a written piece because, you could actually have a back and forth and exchange. But here's, I think, the key bit to me, at least from that piece. She wrote, like other news organizations, we cover the effects of these tragedies when they occur. But because journalists generally do not have access to crime scenes and news organizations rarely, if ever, publish graphic content, most Americans have no way to understand the full scope of the AR-15's destructive power or the extent of the trauma inflicted on victims, survivors, and first responders when a shooter uses this weapon on people. So this was her justification. It's very similar to what was written in the actual piece itself, kind of the idea that people just don't understand the nature of a mass shooting, especially carried out with an AR-15. Well, first, I want to dive into when, the use of graphic images in reporting. I think we should just start there because it does happen, right? The Post made a point of this a number of times that this is something you do see sometimes in news reporting. Graphic images are published. Generally, though, those incidents tend to be war zones and especially things like documenting war crimes. I think a really good example would be Bucha, Ukraine. Just recently, the New York Times had a whole very well done expose where they did, in fact, publish graphic video and pictures of people who were killed in those war crimes. And obviously a much more recent example would be the Hamas terrorist attacks in Israel, where we also saw publications, distribute graphic images from those attacks. It's obviously become very common on social media as well, which we'll get into too. But I think generally that's used. There's a purpose behind publishing those figures, and it's not exclusively the shock value of them. My point of view, and I want to see if you agree, this is done as a sort of a way of documenting what's happening, so that, because in the case of especially war crimes, oftentimes the perpetrators are trying to cover them up or deny that they ever happened.
Right.
And so it can be a valuable service for a news organization with, a respected news organization to publish videos and pictures of them, because, and it can also serve, I think, to some degree to show the lengths at which an organized group, whether it's an army or a terror group, is willing to go to forward their political, ideological, or religious goals. And I don't know that those same factors come into play when you're talking about an individual mass shooter, but perhaps I'm wrong and or I'm not seeing the picture fully. What are your thoughts?
I again, I agree with you, but if I try to put myself in Sally Buzbee's shoes, I guess the argument goes something like, well, Stephen, we are trying to expose people, right? The gun industry denies that this is a problem, so we want to show, the gun industry, just like Vladimir Putin denied that there were, war crimes at Bucha. Well, we're not going to let the gun lobby get away with denying that this is a real problem, that AR-15s are something uniquely dangerous to our society, and so we are going to show, the horrors that can come from this firearm. Again, that's the best argument I can come up with if I'm trying to play devil's advocate. Well, and even then, it doesn't really ring true to me.
And the Post doesn't say that in their piece, right? They don't. Like they do say, they're talking about the damage that can be brought with an AR-15 as the particular weapon, and we'll get into why that may be a bit misleading as well, the way they went about doing this. But to me, it'd be one thing if they were saying, there's conspiracy theorists, Alex Jones types, who will deny that these events happened.
Right.
And so you could see that as a similar justification with, war crimes being denied. Okay, well, we'll publish the graphic photos to show what happened, because conspiracy theorists will use the lack of that to claim things. But again, one, the Post doesn't claim this.
Right.
They don't use this justification. And two, that would be a justification for publishing pictures from all kinds of different mass killings, not just ones that involve the AR-15, which I guess gets more into the specific problem I have. One, I'm not convinced, right, by any of these arguments that publishing these graphic photos is necessary, especially this idea that Americans are unaware of how graphic something like this can be, because these days, especially with social media, I think it's harder to avoid gory images of awful violence than it is not to, these auto playing videos of massacres around the world or street crime or what have you are all over the place. It's not, this is not something in the internet age that's difficult for people to find. It's more, honestly, sometimes more difficult to avoid it.